You'd hear the door chime, smell fresh ground coffee beans being scooped into a paper sack, and see a clerk behind the counter weighing out cheese by hand. For millions of Americans, that was just what buying groceries felt like. Long before Walmart, before Kroger dominated your neighborhood, this was the store on the corner. At its peak, A&P had grown to more than 15,000 stores, according to company records cited by business historians. And for decades, it wasn't just the largest grocery chain in the world, it was the largest retailer of any kind in the United States, full stop, holding that title into the 1960s. Picture that for a second. Before Sears, before Walmart even existed, this grocery store was the biggest retail company in the country. Today, there isn't a single A&P left anywhere. Not one storefront, not one shopping cart with that red logo on it. A company that once controlled a double-digit share of all grocery spending in America simply isn't there anymore. No dramatic single event, no headline scandal. It just stopped existing. So how does the biggest retailer in the country disappear so completely that most people under 40 have never even heard of it? It starts almost a century before the end, with a tea shop in New York City, decades of relentless expansion, and a business strategy that made A&P nearly untouchable for most of the 20th century. But somewhere along the way, the exact thing that made it dominant also planted the seeds of its own decline. And once that decline started, it took over 50 years to finally finish the job. A&P's story starts in 1859, when George Gilman opened a small tea and spice shop in New York City. He was later joined by George Huntington Hartford, and the two built what started as a mail-order tea business into a chain of retail tea and coffee stores. The name that stuck, Great Atlantic and Pacific Tea Company, came from Gilman's flair for big, sweeping branding, evoking a coast-to-coast reach the company didn't actually have yet. For decades, growth was steady but unremarkable. Just another regional tea retailer competing for a slice of a crowded market. The real transformation came in 1912, when A&P introduced something called the economy store, a stripped-down, no-frills format focused purely on low prices, cutting out the extras that traditional grocers offered, like credit accounts and home delivery. It's a concept that sounds obvious now, but at the time it was closer to reinventing what a grocery store even was. It worked immediately. A&P went from roughly 400 stores to more than 1,600 in just 3 years. From there, the growth curve gets almost hard to believe. By 1930, A&P had ballooned to around 15,000 locations and reached $2.9 billion in sales, making it the largest retailer on Earth. It survived the Great Depression largely unscathed, continuing to expand while other businesses collapsed around it, in part because its discount model actually suited a cash-strapped country better than traditional grocers could. By 1965, A&P still held the title of the largest retailer in the United States, not just the largest grocery chain, the largest retailer, period. But that dominance was built on a structure that would eventually work against it, and the cracks were already forming even at the height of A&P's power. Here's the part that's almost ironic. The same family control that built A&P into a giant is largely what strangled it. Ownership and profits stayed concentrated with the Hartford family and a foundation tied to their estate, and most of the company's earnings were paid out as dividends to satisfy that trust, rather than reinvested back into the stores. A&P also stayed deliberately averse to taking on debt, relying almost entirely on depreciation funds for capital. That's a conservative approach that sounds responsible on paper, but it meant that while competitors were pouring borrowed money into bigger, more modern supermarkets through the 1950s and 60s, A&P's stores were quietly falling behind, still running on a format designed for an earlier era. By 1981, a chain that once had 15,000 locations had shrunk to roughly 1,000 stores. The company kept trying to fight back, buying up regional grocers through the 80s, including Kohl's food stores and later Waldbaum's, hoping scale alone could save it. It didn't. New competitors like Walmart were entering the grocery business with exactly the kind of aggressive modern discount model A&P itself pioneered 70 years earlier, except now A&P was the slow-moving incumbent instead of the disruptor. The company kept swinging. In 2007, A&P acquired rival chain Pathmark, a move meant to shore up its position in the New York metro area. Instead, it left the company highly leveraged right as the 2008 financial crisis hit. Think of it like someone taking out a big loan to renovate their house right before losing their job. The timing turned a risky bet into a genuine crisis. By the time A&P filed for Chapter 11 in 2010, the company that had once been the largest retailer in America had fallen to roughly the 28th largest grocery chain in the country, operating just 395 stores confined almost entirely to the Northeast. The 2010 bankruptcy wasn't the end. A&P actually emerged from it as a smaller, privately held company, still limping along in the Northeast under a handful of familiar names: Waldbaum's, SuperFresh, Food Emporium, the Pathmark banner it had acquired years earlier. But the underlying problems never really went away. The debt load was still heavy, the stores were still aging, and the company was still competing against chains that had spent decades building exactly the kind of modern infrastructure A&P never reinvested in. In July 2015, A&P filed for Chapter 11 a second time, and this time there was no plan to come back. The filing was structured for liquidation from the start. Competitors circled almost immediately. Albertsons picked up a chunk of locations under its Acme banner, Ahold took over stores that became Stop and Shop, and Key Food absorbed the Food Emporium brand. Piece by piece, a company that once employed tens of thousands of people across a coast-to-coast network was carved up and absorbed by the very competitors it once dwarfed. The final A&P branded stores closed their doors in late 2016, quietly ending a run that had started with a tea shop in Manhattan 156 years earlier. There was no dramatic headline, no single scandal, just a for-lease sign in a strip mall parking lot and a shopping center anchor tenant that simply wasn't there for the next lease cycle. It's a strange kind of ending for a company that once invented the modern grocery store. A&P didn't get out-innovated by one rival with a better idea. It got outlasted by dozens of competitors doing the thing A&P itself pioneered, reinvesting in the store instead of paying itself dividends and hoping the old model would hold. Subscribe for more vanished chains. We're digging into the stores and restaurants that used to be everywhere. Did you ever shop at an A&P or grow up near one? Tell me what you remember in the comments. The biggest retailer in America didn't lose to one competitor. It lost to 50 years of standing still.